Our first reading this morning is from the book of Psalms, book 72, verses 1 through 14. Give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to a king's son. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. May the mountains yield prosperity for the people and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the needy, and crush the oppressor. May he live while the sun endures and as long as the moon throughout all generations. May he be like rain that falls on the mown grass, like showers that water the earth. In his days may righteousness flourish and peace abound until the moon is no more. May he have dominion from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. May his foes bow down before him and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and of the isles render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts. May all kings fall down before him. All nations give him service. For he delivers the needy when they call, the poor and those who have no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy, and saves the lives of the needy. From oppression and violence he redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight. And our second reading is from Isaiah, book 60, chapter 60, verses 1 through 6. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you. The young camels of Midian and Ephah, all those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. This is the word of God.
Would you pray with me? Creator God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. So do you have 2020 vision? Well, it's only January 5th, and you're probably already getting tired of hearing that, aren't you? That play on words juxtaposing the new year we've just entered with the sense of reflection people have this time of year. But I have kind of enjoyed that pun. But we're operating under a misunderstanding when we talk about 2020 vision. 2020 vision is not synonymous with perfect vision. 2020 vision is not necessarily perfect, according to the American Optometric Association. 2020 vision is a term used to express normal visual acuity measured at a distance of 20 feet. If you have 2020 vision, you can see clearly at 20 feet what you should normally see at that distance. By contrast, if you have 2100 vision, that means that you must get as close as 20 feet to see what a normal person sees at 100 feet. But that does not mean you have perfect vision. 2020 only indicates shortness or clarity of vision at distance. Other important vision skills, including peripheral awareness, or side vision, eye coordination, depth perception, focusing ability, color vision, and so on, contribute to your overall visual ability. So what we are really talking about when we talk about 2020 vision is 2020 visual acuity. This discusses the sharpness of our vision. Medically speaking, visual acuity is a static measurement tested under high contrast conditions to determine the clarity of a person's eyesight in standard conditions. So according to the American Optometric Association, 2020 vision is not the perfect vision, but it speaks about your ability to see what is coming, to see at a distance, to see far away. 2020 vision gives a person a chance to prepare for what is coming, to anticipate where they are going, to adapt to what is, and prepare for what will be. Speaking both metaphorically and literally, if one has 2020 vision, they are more likely to know where they're going. Conversely, you hear people say, hindsight is 2020. By this, they're implying that when we look back on things that happened or things that we have done, we have perfect vision, a perfect understanding of what was and what will be. But let me tell you, hindsight is never 2020. Our memory of what was is always obscured by cataracts of particularity, and the events we remember usually didn't really happen the way we remember them. Hindsight can never be 2020 because it's always operating through our human lenses. So metaphorically speaking, this visual acuity, our 2020 vision, discusses our ability to see clearly the possibilities that are on the horizon, the potential that can be realized in our midst, the life that can be. Metaphorically speaking, this visual acuity is what the Magi had, what Isaiah had, what the psalmist had today as they imagined the possibilities of what could be. The prophet who wrote the section of Isaiah that Pat just read had especially clear visual acuity. He was writing at the time of the reunification of Israel, the exiles having been returned after 60 years of being dispersed. The temple had been destroyed, as well as the sovereignty of the nation. But this particular contributor to the book of Isaiah, that we call Isaiah, had great visual acuity. He had maybe 20/20 vision. He saw the potential that was inherent in the people of Israel and spoke not of what was, but of what could be. The same could be said of the psalmist, writing today about the reign of King Solomon many hundreds of years after that reign. King Solomon was reputed to be the wisest of all the kings of Israel. But let me tell you, this psalmist doesn't have 20/20 hindsight, because I'm sure his glowing testimony to how things were in the days of Solomon is somewhat idealized. But he does have great visual acuity because he sees the potential in the nation for how things could be. Looking forward, he has a vision of what could be if only the rest of the nation would buy into it. And then we have our Magi. The story of the Magi is a familiar one. We hear it every year at this time. They had such great visual acuity that they were able to see God's divine nature as God revealed it, not obscured by the cataracts of culture. Their cultural lenses would not have let them accept God as an infant, born into poverty, into a family that would soon become immigrants seeking refuge from governmental oppression. God is almighty, not humble, not a conqueror, not a servant. I'm sorry, a conqueror, not a servant. But the Magi had such great visual acuity that they were able to see past these cultural things that would obscure their vision, especially the tempting wealth, power, and pompousness of King Herod, who would start wars with other nations and other things because of his own cowardly fears. The Magi did not let their vision be obscured by the tyrant ruling their country. They had perfect visual acuity. They saw the world as it truly was, but more important, they saw God as God truly is. And they saw how the world could be. Babushka, not so much. Her visual acuity was obscured by the cataracts of cultural commitments and expectations. She saw God's presence in the visits of the Magi. She saw the potential inherent in their testimony, the ability to bask in God's presence if she would only join their crusade. But she could not follow the Magi to God because her house was too dirty. It was expected of her to keep a clean house. She could not follow the Magi to God because the gifts she had to offer were not good enough. They were shabby. What would people think if her house was dirty and her gifts were shabby? Once everything else was taken care of, then she could follow the Magi. Then she would go and seek God. If you try to fit God into your life, you will never have time for God. If you try to fit your life into God, you will always have time for what matters. If you expect God to fit into the time slot you have available, you will find yourself like Babushka, always seeking, always searching, but never able to truly find God. But if you clear the cultural cataracts that are obscuring your perfect visual acuity and let yourself have the 2020 vision of the Magi who dropped everything to follow God's guiding light, who stood up against King Herod, who were able to see the truth of God's presence and the potential of how the world could be, then we can faithfully follow the star. Then we will find God's presence realized here on earth. So what is your 2020 vision regarding your relationship with Jesus? Will we be like Babushka, telling him to fit into the small spaces where we have time for him, when everything else has been prioritized and the pressures of culture are all taken care of? Will we follow him after the house is cleaned, the lawn is mowed, the toys are cleaned up and painted, and every social obligation fulfilled? Then, in sheer exhaustion, we find time for Jesus only to drift away into a much-needed daytime nap, only to wake up at a late hour and find that the Magi have left. Or will we be like the Magi, like the psalmist, like this particular contributor to the book of Isaiah, who saw the world as it truly is and how it can be if God's presence was realized? Will we follow the Magi or follow the crown? So what is your 2020 vision regarding your faith? It should not be something accidental or something that happens when we get around to it. It should be intentional, our priority, the focus of our lives, not just another thing to do. An intentional commitment to focusing on faith in 2020 is a wise choice indeed. For the Magi found the king, and their lives were changed. Herod, for all his blustering, and Babushka, for her cultural distractions, did not. So blessings to each and every one of you. May you all have 2020 vision this year and beyond. And let your great visual acuity lead you to true discipleship. Amen.